All right, it is beta branch 1.5.4 and it is massive. There are so many things that are added to the game, but in my typical fashion, I'm going to go through some real quick bullet points of some of the bigger things that were added or improved to give you a real fast idea on whether or not you even want to bother with 1.5.4. And let me tell you, you should. So just right out the gate, there are tons of new perks for Roguery, Steward, Tactics, Trade, and Scouting. It's massive. Roguery itself, you can now kind of play as this Bandit King, as a lot of people requested. Now, I say Bandit King because it's kind of a fun nomenclature, but it's really, we'll go through it in the actual in-game portion of this video. But the Bandit perks are geared more towards increasing Bandit units, reducing the morale penalties of using them, and overall making it so they can convert to your party a lot easier. They've finished all of the throwing perks. There was a massive troop overhaul, so armor and weapons now fit their corresponding troop tier. Modding tools were added to the game. That's not with this beta branch, but they were added in between this one and 1.5.3. I didn't do a separate video on it, so I wanted to touch on that real fast. Warband crosshair has been added to the game, so rather than having the typical 4.1 that we get in Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord, you can use the one from Mount and Blade Warband if you've never seen that. I'll show you how to access it in the game. Campaign save categories were created, so now this isn't retroactive, so any old save you have will not create a new category for it. But if you create a new save, then it will create a new category for it. It'll say campaign 1, 2, 3, respectively, so on and so forth. Hopefully they'll add something in a future hotfix or patch that will retroactively add categories for old save, but that is not currently in the game. They added new customizations for hair, skin color, eye color, and a new voice option too. So we now have 4 voice options. They added a new quick talk feature. So whenever you jump to a town or a city and you want to talk to a notable, you can just click them and choose quick talk. You don't have to actually load into the location anymore, which is really cool. A huge amount of performance increases, including, it doesn't say this in the patch notes, but it looks like there's been a little bit of texture sharpening or upgrading, because as I was going through the unit profiles of all the new units in the game, I've noticed that a lot of them look a lot better. And lastly, they fixed a lot of harnesses, and they made it so you can preview a harness in the actual inventory screen, as well as being able to look at all of the skills that a character has in that screen. So we're 2 minutes and 45 seconds into this. You now know at least a good bullet point of what this patch roughly covers. There are more things I'm about to go into in depth in these patch notes, and there are a ton. And also this is old save compatible. So if you want to load up a new game, you're more than welcome to, but your old saves will work. The only thing that will be missing are all of the new clans that they added to the game. But if that's all you wanted to know, you're good to go. Go ahead and shut down the video. That's 3 minutes and 11 seconds out of your life. Now let's jump into the bigger and more dense portion of this patch notes by going through everything. And since this is so dense, we're not going to go through every single note. I've highlighted everything that I want to talk about, and I might be missing some things that are pretty important, so I apologize if I do. Go ahead and leave a comment below letting me know about some things that are really important that I might have missed and you want to talk about. Let's jump into this. There are a ton of crash fixes, namely though, fixed a bug which prevented heavy infantry, skirmisher, heavy cavalry, and light cavalry formations from spawning correctly in certain missions. They would sometimes spawn all over the place or in the middle of the map. This has now been fixed. Going down, there's a ton of these. So if you feel like your game's crashing a lot and there's certain parameters that they're crashing within, please look through this section and see if that's been fixed for you. Now, performance, like I said, had a big overhaul, loading core assets separately to speed up first meaningful render during game launch. So when you boot the game up, it should go a little bit quicker than it usually does, especially if you're loading a lot of mods. Usually that takes like what feels like 8 minutes. This should be a much faster process now. Fixed CPU spikes in the campaign map caused by the distance checking algorithm, and various CPU memory leaks were removed. So overall, moving around the campaign map should be easier. And I've noticed that jumping into combat doesn't kind of stutter as much in certain weird places, and it seems to overall run a little bit smoother. And I say that with every single patch note, which I think is a good thing to keep saying. Save and load. Like I said, save game files are now categorized by their game in the UI. This is not retroactive as of this patch, but will hopefully be in the future, as well as with hotfixes. And I'll show you that, what it looks like in the actual game once we jump into it. 5 new Empire villages were added, which I will show you in the game as well. But for the most part, they're around the northern Empire, around that kind of area, as it kind of borders into the Western Empire, and I'll go over those. But for the most part, it just kind of adds villages in between locations when there would have been just a large expanse of open land. So now there's at least a stopgap in between. Various improvements on castle gates for better AI behavior. I noticed that whenever I've jumped into a siege now, they tend to work a little bit better. And maybe it's just me kind of being optimistic and think, wow, they're moving a lot better. But you guys can let me know in the comments below if you feel that as well. The AI has been reacting in sieges a lot better when it comes to breaking down gates and moving through them and interacting with them. Because there's another patch note that corresponds to siege AI, which we'll talk about later. The Northern Light Harness and Imperial Riding Harnesses were replaced with newer versions, and they look badass. I'll show you those off to you guys. The Northern Light Harness used to just like be below the horse's head, so you could never actually see it, and now looks pretty spiffy. Added a new male voice set, which kind of sounds like an Imperial voice. Added additional colors for skin, hair, and eyes to the character creation. Various improvements on the textures and blend shapes. Also added bushy eyebrows. So now you can look like Drake if you so wish. For the UI, we now have town quick talks like I was talking about. The crafting screen has got a nice cool little overhaul as well. There's a new visuals for the crafting final stage pop-up. So if you took a look at the development diary number 4 that they released, they went over some of these, but I will absolutely show them off as well. The stamina bar for smithing heroes, so that players can see the stamina without hovering over each hero, is quite nice. And I'll, of course, show this off. So when you click the your hero in the lower left on the crafting screen, it shows you a stamina bar that says 100% and is corresponding to colors of green, yellow, and red. So you don't have to just hover over every single thing. Added a new icon. This one's huge. Added a new icon to the inventory that shows the current hero's skill on hover. Now, if you're like me and you have a ton of companions, then you choose companions that you want to have specific type of captain skills. Okay, I want this guy to be my archer companion, so I want him to be just chock full of archer skills. Well, if you jump through a lot of saves, like I do, you kind of don't remember who's who and what their names are. Hovering over this icon will at least give you all the skills that this character has, so you can quickly select their armor, and it makes you don't have to keep popping back and forth between the party screen or the clan screen to look at their skills. Added sorting to SP or single player scoreboards, and now heroes are shown at the top of their party lists. I put this in yellow because it's not a huge quality of life improvement, but it is there nonetheless. Added an option to swap character and mount places in the inventory for a more focused view of the equipped mount, effectively adding like a preview button for any mount saddle you want to put on or any mount itself. You can see what the individual harnesses look like. Now, if a locked item is removed from the inventory, it won't lose its lock status, thank God. So you have to manually remove it. If you add to the stack, it won't remove it. If you load the game, it won't remove it. You have to do it manually now. Added enable and reset tutorial controls to the campaign options window. So now you won't constantly be bombarded every time you load your game up or load a new patch in that says, hey, this is how you move around the map, WASD. You can now just shut those off. Added a drop down for hero selection to inventory. So what this means is at the top center of your inventory, you'll see your name. You can now click that and it's a drop down menu to quickly select the hero you want. This is the same thing when you take a look at the skills screen by simply pressing C. You can use it through there. It's the same drop down menu for the most part. Added wage of the party and tooltips to troop icons in the clan parties tab, making it again a really cool one-stop shop to kind of go through everything a little bit easier, and you get a nice breakout of their wage. Added a confirmation query to disband army and kingdom armies tab. I have accidentally disbanded an army without being prompted, hey, are you sure you want to do this? So this confirmation query was added to the game. Fix the damage amount for throwing weapons showing incorrect values in some cases. Now, I'm not 100% sure how this really computes to you as the user. I'm not sure if I've been seeing, oh man, this is such an absurd amount of damage, this doesn't make any sense, or if this is something that really controls a lot of stuff in the game. I wasn't sure, but I wanted to highlight it and talk about it. Those of you who have maybe a little bit more experience with the under the hood of the game might be able to tell me in the comments below. Fixed an error in the item preview window that caused the reins of a saddle to not be added. So now you can actually see things a little bit better. And a number of other fixes were added to the game. So if you are suffering from specific situations, please go ahead and seek them out in this list. A bug in the tactical AI that caused a defending army to become indecisive between different tactical positions and go back and forth was fixed. So I have noticed this plenty of times when I'm fighting against a usually around similar size force. They'll constantly shift their forces and move them around the map and not really know what the hell they're doing. So this has been fixed. Fix some unintended behavior of the battering ram that could stop it from delivering damage, among other things. This also includes it just not being used or stopping halfway through going to the gate and the troops abandoning it. So you have a lot of changes and improvements to CGI when using battering rams. With character development, you get a ton of stuff. Added 31 combat-related primary and secondary throwing perk effects to the game. This should complete all throwing perks in the current design. We get 25 campaign side for roguery, 31 tactic perks, but yeah, that's right, 40 campaign side scouting perks, 38 campaign side steward perks, and 33 side trade perks. Like, they just blew out that lower portion of the perk skill tree and just gave a ton of stuff. Now, keep in mind though, not all of these will be 100% active. They even said that in the development diary, which was kind of awkward. They were saying, yeah, if you want to find out what's active, use this third-party website to find out 100% what is active. So keep in mind, you might find a lot of really cool new perks, but they might not all be 100% there just yet. Wait until the beta branch goes into the main branch to hopefully get near 100%. Even then, it still probably have some issues. Fix a number of issues with some of the newly added crossbow and archery perks right here. For the most part, it's just kind of helping out to correct explanation or fixing some of the effects that we're not actually going through. Clans will respawn their parties. Oh, this is clan and party. Will respawn their parties based on settlement location data rather than saved coordinates to avoid situations where data loss during loading could lead to parties glitching into the geometry of settlements. This change prevents enemy lords from spawning inside settlements and blocking the settlement's gate. So I think there was a big issue with clans that they maybe did a big passover in this patch. I didn't highlight it, and I was talking to my little Tantan about it, and we kind of speculated what this really means. Clans are saved now. Clans added to XML will not be added to games that have already started and will only be available in new games. So what we kind of ultimately feel is that the clans were probably being killed off and never repopulating, which is a bug that was fixed. And clans themselves, when they were repopulating in weird positions and never able to really kind of come back to the game. So with a lot of these bug fixes and additions to the game, they've hopefully fixed the way that NPC clans work, in addition to adding a whole bunch of new ones. Healing, though, has had a huge change. So the medicine skill now works a little bit better and a little bit more comprehensively. So instead of scaling healing rate with the army size, it now scales better with the medicine skill, which just makes more sense. And I'm stoked on it. So probably the most important portion of these changes is this one. Change the skill bonus for healing regulars from 0.1% per skill level to 1% per skill level. So again, to put this into perspective, 129 skill is now 129% per skill level, 129% healing bonus increase for troops. I think it's divided by 2 for heroes, and I'll show you that obviously in the game. So it's very huge. You'll notice that your armies will replenish a lot faster, and you'll be back in the fight at a quicker pace. It's way better than it was. I remember back in I think 1.5's initial patch, when healing itself was just dropped to a standstill and it was a snail's pace. That has now been fixed on a huge level. Increase the lower boundary of the herd speed penalty players receive if you have a high amount of animals in relation to your party size. So what this is saying is that if you have, let's just say, a herd penalty of 0.01 right now, it's probably been increased to 0.1 or maybe even 1.0. I'm blowing that out of proportion here, but they're saying that the lower boundary has been more impactful is probably a better way to put it. So you might never have really noticed your herd penalty. You want to press the little up arrow icon, the upper right or lower right corner, and you'll see a horse icon. Hover over that and it'll show you all of your movement penalties and your movement bonuses, and herd might be one of them if you have a lot of livestock and you have more horses than you do soldiers, especially if you have a lot of cargo based horses rather than speed based horses. So be mindful of this. This should slow you down a little bit on the campaign map. Kingdoms and Diplomacy added new clans. You know, it's funny that they didn't put the bit about all the armies getting completely redone over here in armies, but we'll get there, I guess. Fixed a bug that prevented minor faction leaders from being replaced once they were dead. So this was, again, huge. You have to talk to a minor faction leader if you want to bring that minor faction into your faction. So they'll always say, hey, if you want to hire us, go talk to our faction leader. And those weren't being replaced before. Now they will be replaced if you're playing with permanent death on. Artisans now offer troops like other notables, meaning that you will now have more troops to be able to recruit in cities because they now offer troops. Stashes were added, not mustaches, were added to player-owned castles. So you now have the ability to stow your belongings in your own player-owned castle. A number of also settlement action fixes were done here too, but for the most part, nothing overly important that I noticed from this list. Wait, wasn't this one? If a player doesn't have access to Lord's Hall, okay, no, that's something different. 2 new quests were added: the Prodigal Son and Village Needs Drought Animals. They've both been implemented into the game, as well as a number of changes for a ton of quests. Improvements and fixes related to Escort the Caravan quest, because you now have an escort button and you know where the quest caravan is going to be going. Every time the quest caravan exits a town, the caravan leader notifies the player about where the caravan is going. Also, the bandit waves have been divided into 3 levels, so you have increasing difficulty of bandit waves. Improvement and fixes related to the Family Feud quest, which is nice. Agent behaviors were improved after the fight, and fixed a crash that occurred when the player opened a conversation with the target notable via the quick talk button, which I don't think we really would have experienced yet. Alternative solution companion reward experiences are tweaked in all quests. So basically saying sending your companion off to do a quest rather than you doing it has been tweaked. Those rewards will be more bountiful or less depending on which one or what way it swung before. Scrolling down here into conversations and encounters, many of the conversations that were used in the old mission system were changed to the new, quicker conversation system. This would be the time where you would load in and then start talking. Now it's the newer, faster one where it just kind of snaps to and you're talking to them now. Some other things that were changed: fixed some troops appearing older than they should. I put this in red because if you remember back in 1.2 or 1.3, they did a big troop overhaul, kind of like they're doing right now, where everyone looked like super old and everyone was just a humongous linebacker. It seems to be that's the case right now. Almost every single faction's troops are really old looking, so this says that it fixes it. Looks like they added it. Also, everyone looks to be really huge in size, so that will probably be scaled back in future hotfixes or patches, or it might be working as intended. We'll find out as the time goes on. Body armor with arm and leg covers now provide more armor to those parts. So if you say have a halberd that covers all the way down to your wrist, it'll now provide more armor, which is really good, especially for any units or companions that you've got in your army. Tournament participants don't spawn near other participants anymore. I'm looking at you, Battanian Arena. Added notifications for prisoners who escape from our settlements or our party, thank God. Players can use Alt plus the left mouse button to escort a party. You pretty much hold Alt, you left click a party on the map, and it causes a quick little stutter. Like the game will like freeze for about a half a second or two, and then your character will simply line up right next to them and follow them to their destination. So it's a nice addition to the game. Added encyclopedia entry for Imperial factions. I haven't been able to find out exactly what this means just yet. So if you do, let me know in the comments below. Multiplayer got a number of fixes as well, especially to map related and other fixes across the board, and also some little things for the UI. But for both, we have UI scale control added and the ability to show banners being an opacity slider versus an on or an off, which is very nice. Added a new, or old, depending on how you look at it, warband style 3-part crosshair, which we spoke about earlier, and separated a general kill feed, the one that appears in the top right that's either colored green or red, depending on your troops killing something or your troops being killed, and the personal feed, the one that appears in the center of what you're doing damage to and so on and so forth. And if you kill something, they're now separate in options. It used to be if you turned off kill feed, it would turn off the kill feed in the upper right and notifications of how much damage you were doing and if you were killing someone possibly, that would appear in the center of the screen. So those have now been separated. And also gauntlet memory and performance improvements. Again, more of those performance improvements as well, and significant performance improvements for the animation system. This will benefit situations with lots of animations, such as battles and very populated town scenes. Almost to the end here, we have combat. Agents surround enemy agents and choose a position based on the weapon length of the enemy. If the enemy had a longer weapon, like a spear, the surrounding agents moved a bit far from the enemy. Now they compare the enemy's weapon length with their weapon length and move closer if the enemy's weapon is longer. So you shouldn't hopefully have these engagements where your troops are just out of arm's length because the enemy has a spear and they have a sword. They will move in line to try to connect here. Also, some interesting changes to cavalry. This looks like it applies more to multiplayer because spear bracing is not in the game just yet. But reduced the angle of possible rear-ups, increased rearing damage threshold a tiny bit, and braced spears can now also rear up cavalry. So all those additions were made to the game. We have a number of things for modding, so if you're a modder, you're going to want to check those out for sure. But let's jump into the game. I'm going to show you guys all of the new changes, like the troop overhaul, how to access the new crosshair, some of those campaign save categories, all of the things that were added to the game. Let's jump over into Mount & Blade. Okay, the first thing we'll take a look at real fast is the save game categories. So this is the new campaign I created, and it obviously jumps into campaign 1. All of the old ones stay in their own uncategorized category. Now I tried to see if I could edit this in the game folder in your My Documents, and it looks like you can't. I figured maybe this would create a campaign 1 folder. It does not, but there are the new save game categories. So let's jump into the actual game for some of the other changes. Starting with the new skills. Now, I'm not going to go through every single one of these sets of perks because there are so many. You get all the new trade ones, you get all the new tactics ones, you get all the new scouting ones, and all of the new steward ones. Lastly, the new roguery ones. Now, these ones I'm going to look at a little bit more in depth because remember, like I said, you can do this cool Bandit King style playthrough. So, bandit units in your party gain experience faster, or they're easier to convince. And a lot of your secondary passives will also help out with raiding or with your bandits themselves. So going over here, convert bandit prisoners without suffering morale penalty as a secondary. Or this one, bandits units in your party require 20% cheaper wages. So you can really focus on having a party that is predominantly driven with bandits. And I think that that's really cool. In addition to a lot of these supplemental kind of campaign bonuses, as it were, are also going to benefit the acts of someone who's got roguery in mind. Bandit prisoners can be recruited to your party 30% faster, and they consume 50% less food. 20% better deals with ransom brokers, so you can be better at ransoming. Increased prisoner limit by 20% as well. White lies gives you your crime rating decreases faster, so if you're into doing more of the crime related portions of the game. I think the roguery tree here is a cool, good first start. But I think what needs to be added to the game too, though, are a ton of different and diverse and really more expansive roguery options. And I think that this primes it for it. This is giving us pretty much the base template or the baseline for us to have a really cool, fun style of roguery playthrough. So I'm very excited by this, especially this last one. Increase loot amount by 1% for every skill point over 200. Woof. Now, medicine, like I talked about. So here's my character with 8 skill. Healing rate increases for troops by 8%. Divide that by 2. That's your heroes. Now this is, of course, if you're the surgeon. So let's switch to my actual surgeon here. And you can see it's 129% and then 64.5% for heroes. Like, this is going to be way better when it comes to recovering all of your troops. So a huge excitement here across all the new skills and all of the new perks. Now, as for the campaign map, remember there are 5 new Empire villages that were added, and I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that this one is brand new right over here by Stadium Castle. I believe 1 or 2 of these in here are new, because it used to be quite a long expanse in between these castles and cities around here. So I'm sure 1 or 2 of these is new. I know for a fact this one is brand new, and I think this one was always here, but I know that that one right there for sure is brand new. We get another village added right here, and I believe I thought there was another one right around here. Oh, this guy right there, that one's definitely new. So they've increased the density of Empire villages, especially in this area, and especially in this area, which seems to have had a lot of distance in between the lands, so I'm quite fine with that. In addition to the campaign map, remember we also get the ability to escort. So let's go ahead and just press Alt left click here. The game should kind of lag and hold for a bit, but no, it didn't. So there we go. He just kind of follows him right to his destination. To kind of see that again, we'll Alt left click there. We'll just kind of follow that around. So it's a way easier to follow. It is now way easier to follow things across the map. It's just a lot more conducive and makes a lot more sense. That covers a lot of the really new, cool campaign map additions. For the new options, jump into gameplay, and you're going to start to see a lot of the cool ones here. So, friendly troop banner opacity is right here. Put that down to 1 from 100 to 0, whatever you want. We'll just pop it at 50 for right now. Also, we're going to report damage and casualties in their own separate buttons now right here, which is just so huge. Also, the last part is the crosshair type can be changed between the 4-part one that we typically have in Bannerlord or the 3-part one that you get when you're playing Warband or anything of the sort. Hopefully that helps you out in deciding what you'd like to do in the gameplay portion of your options. As for the quick talk ability, you're going to go ahead and jump into any city or town, left click, and then just pop into quick talk, and there you go. It just immediately jumps into it. Way easier than pressing talk and loading in before, like say like this. All right, we're loading. We're really loading right now. So there we go. Geez. So as you can see, a sizable increase in the speed to actually getting into the conversation with any notable outside of the realm. Also recruiting troops. You'll now have access to any of the individual, not traders, but any of the individual people that didn't have troops before, like any of the merchants. They now have them here to be recruited. And also if I jump into the smithy, I can see the new stamina bar. So you can see that there. Very easy. I don't have to hover over them anymore. I just simply click this button and I can see at a glance who is good to go. So really nice improvement to that, but I still want to see the improvements that they talked about to the smithing system as a whole. Once we get those, I think that this will be way more appealing and also fix the level of the exorbitant selling price of most of the things that you can smith. Let's jump into some cool inventory stuff now. So with the new inventory system, we can now press this little cool button and get a little better idea of how things are going to be with our horse. Remember, like I said, they added that new button to give you an idea of all the skills of your character. That's right here. You hover over that and you can see them all in a nice list right there. Now we have 2 textures to take a look at, 2 brand new ones, or not brand new ones, but 2 updated ones. So the first one is the Northern Light Harness. Let's pop one up here. I'm using the cheat enable mode to access pretty much every item in the game. I put this on and it looks great. It used to be that you couldn't even see the actual like saddle itself, and the harness on the face was underneath the horse's face. So that looks great. The other one though is the Imperial Light or Imperial Riding Harness. Nothing really too awesome here. But what this tells me is it's a placeholder, or I'm sorry, the Aeneas saddle. Where is it? I think it's called the harness of Aeneas. It tells me that that one possibly is a placeholder because it's simply using this texture. We can actually, there it is. This is one of the newer unique saddles that were added to the game. It looks exactly the same. So hopefully the these unique saddles, like the saddle of Aeneas and Fortuna's Choice, which is right there, will actually look different now in coming patches when they decide to say, okay, the unique saddles will have some sort of different characteristic. But those are the unique ones that are added into the game. In addition, if I click this, I can now just select a new character by going right through here. A lot better, a lot nicer. Also, all the textures seem to have gotten a nice little overhaul. Things don't overlap as much, but they still do. I'm not gonna say that they don't entirely, but these arms used to pop through these vambraces, but they don't anymore. Things look a little bit higher detail, which is quite nice. You can definitely see it more on leather. Leather kind of shows it off a little bit better, I think. Let's see if I have anyone else I can... Yeah, like especially like padded armor and the such. You can see the details too on the rivets of this helmet too, a little bit better than you would before. So that's quite nice. Now, the last thing I want to go over is the party screen and the big, massive troop overhaul, as well as some of the customizations in the game. In fact, let's just do those customizations right now. Press cancel. It'll take me 5.5 years to jump back to here. Press V. So here is some clothes on Baldwin. But here's our new voice.
Die, you bastards! Line up!
So quite nice.
No quarter for the craven!
If you're curious what it sounds like after sucking in helium,
Hammering!
there you go.
Climb up! Shield forward!
Bunch of new skin color options. Eye color is in here. Tons of new ones there. My one eye that you can see. I really like some of these blues in here. A ton of new hair color options too, including a new nice true red. So plenty of good customization options added into the game. But let's jump into that troop overhaul to close our video out. So this overhaul is pretty intense. Like I said before, I noticed that there's a lot more detail and a lot of armor, and I noticed it from this menu the most part. But the crossbowmen, for example, for Volondia got an overhaul entirely. Some of them don't have chain until the absolute last point. Right here they have the light leather scale armor. And they have got this nice, really cool, interesting Western leather coat going. So the billman itself got changed. And everyone, like I said, looks really big. Everyone looks pretty linebacker-ish right now. Like, very huge. Light cav got a nice change here, too. The helmets on the sergeants are different, too. Swordsmen, for the most part, are the same, but the infantry and spearmen are also pretty identical. Footmen got a little bit of a tweak. Taking out Sturgia, though, we get a nice change, especially to the Sturgian spearmen, which now gets chainmail rather than their crappy leather armor they used to have. They're finally going to be competitive in Tier 4. The Berserker has had its name changed from Berserker and Ulf Hednar to Linebreaker and Heroic Linebreaker, and look at that guy. Woof! We now have a heavy spearman and a heavy axeman versus the old shock troop and veteran warrior. So this has all been changed completely. Ardent Brigand and Horse Raider for the most part are the same. Veteran Bowmen and whatnot have had a little change around to their armor. All of the weapons should correspond better to their actual tier as well. So this is a tapered Northern Blade. This is a Northern Common Axe. This is a Northern Backsword, and it should progress upwards from there to a fuller narrow war sword. Looking over at, I don't think Khazate had much of a change from what I remember. Yeah, for the most part, Khazate is almost exactly the same. The Marksman and the Archer have had a little bit of a tweaking. And it's mainly going to be with the weapons that you're going to see the biggest changes with to match up with their tiers. For Britannia, so one of the big problems I had is that they did this big cool overhaul and changed the way around all their armor and their weapons, but they still didn't change their stats. This guy's got 130 riding as a foot soldier, so that's kind of a disappointment. But the Falksmen have some pretty burly armor here, and also the only Britannian cavalry now got better with some nice additions to their armor. This is Highland reinforced mail over tartan, whereas these guys have the Highland warlord armor. So the horsemen and the scout are a little bit more tanky now. The skirmishers and wildlings and mounted skirmishers look a little bit more fearsome because of that ranger armor is a really high boost up to that armor. The Fian, for the most part, hasn't changed either. Slight tweaks to their armor with the Britannian Fian champion getting the noble armor. This versus the Fian here, which I believe used to have ranger armor. And the Britannian hero getting the Highland mail shirt. So they got their armor scaled back a little bit. But for the most part, they're still just absolutely devastating. Taking a look real quick too at the Asarai, veteran infantry, they didn't get a ton of changing. The recruit and the tribesman has a better progression. This recruit used to have this armor on the tribesman, but the tribesman now gets a southern padded cloth, a little bit more armor here in the situation, which stays the same though into the footman, which is unfortunate because that's a tier jump with the same armor. Skirmisher though gets a little bit better of an armament, including a spear as well as a throwing spear or a javelin and a scimitar, going down to the archer and then to the master archer, which has had a slight change as well from its armor. The footman going to the infantry has also been a change. These guys have actually like swapped armor, I think, because this armor is not great. This leather strips over padded robe, which actually got an increase to its armor, so it's not too terrible anymore. The veteran infantry guy gets the nice, cool, big, badass Southern Lamellar armor. And these guys, for the most part, are the same, with the Mamluk Palace Guard getting pretty fearsome with its loadout. A nice Southern scale armor where it used to have, I think it was like Brigandine before, or something of the sort. No one has it on them, so I can't really show you. The Ferris also got a little bit of a tooling as well. His armor got changed up a little bit, especially in the veteran to the Vanguard veteran rank. Looking pretty hot and sexy there. Imperial armor, for the most part, though, didn't really even get touched at all. Imperial archers have different armor. And everything else, for the most part, these guys have different armor now, but they're a tier 5, so I didn't really notice much of a change in the Imperial roster at all. Cataphracts got a little bit of a change, though. Their helmets are now different, especially at these top tiers. And the Vizsla recruit is a little bit more, I guess, lighter armored. He doesn't have a cool helmet anymore. The Equite here and the Heavy Horseman, though, for the most part, are pretty much the same. So, unfortunately, too, the Druzhnik, oh god, where is it? Huh, there we go. They got a little shift to their armor as well in the very first portion from the veteran, so they got a little tooling, as it were. And also the top tier for Volandia, theirs didn't change much either. The Bannerknight got a different helmet, but for the most part, they are pretty much the same. So that covers all of the overhaul. This is going to greatly influence my unit guide videos. I'm going to probably have to entirely redo them now, unfortunately, but I did plan for this happening, and I'm going to be waiting closer to launch to redo those unit guides that are in line with the current state of the game at the time of doing them. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment below, all that fun action. Let me know about any of the big changes that I might have missed that you wanted me to talk about. I'm sorry if I went over anything too quickly or too fast. There was just so much to cover that I wanted to at least give you a quick cursory dive bomb into this. From my experience, it's very stable. I haven't had many issues with things crashing, but I'll be honest with you, I almost never have crashing issues with any of the beta branches. I think there was 1 or 2 where I actually said, hey, don't test it. It's in bad shape right now. Apparently 1.5.3 was that situation, and I said to test it. So I think it's kind of one of those your mileage may vary type things, but I would go ahead and at least give it a shot to see what all these changes are and how they're going to influence your campaign, or if you want to start another one. You can play your current one. There's nothing that's going to stop you from doing so. It's 100% retro for the most part. But I think when we jump to 1.6, they've said that that's when you'll start to get your game saves not being compatible with the newest versions. I believe they said every version number jump, primary to 1.5 to 6 to 7, so on and so forth, those are going to be incompatible. But mid patches in between those version number jumps are going to be fine. So hopefully that is the case here, and you can continue to play your campaign in Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one, and take care.